billion a year by 2015. And so far, it's only shown us how 13% of that would be achieved. Now, the Conservatives have promised to cut borrowing faster with fewer tax rises, so they need bigger cuts, about £64 billion by 2015. Now, so far, they've shown where about 18% of that would come from, less than a fifth. Now, the Liberal Democrats have to find cuts of £46.5 billion a year, and they've said how 25% of that, a quarter, would be achieved. But they'd need to find more spending cuts after 2015. And the IFS thinks they're the best of a pretty bad lot. Labour and the Conservatives say that efficiency savings in Whitehall will do some of the work. But the IFS says these claims don't mean much because the savings might have happened anyway. It thinks the next government may well have to cut spending on popular benefits to make the numbers add up.
If they take the view in the end that the overall squeeze on public services is too much to cope with, then we might well see cuts in social security benefits, tax credits, playing a bigger part after the election than any of the parties is willing to admit to beforehand.
It's very nice to meet you.
As the party in power, Labour could have transformed this debate by showing what the cuts would mean for individual departments from next year. It chose not to. So what would cuts on this scale look like? Well, here's one way to get a handle on it. According to the IFS, there's at least £40 billion to come out of public services over the next Parliament that the politicians aren't being very clear about. And the figure is even larger if the Conservatives win. Now, the next Chancellor could cut pay by 5% for all public sector workers across the board, freeze all benefits and tax credits for a single year, and abolish winter fuel payments for over 60s, and free TV licences for older people as well. Now, all of that together would only save around £12 billion a year. You'd only be about a quarter of the way there. Now, everyone's been focusing on what happens in the days after the election if there isn't a clear result. But the message of this report today is that the politicians should also be talking about the difficult decisions coming after that. Hugh.
Stephanie, thank you very much. Stephanie Flanders there, our economics editor. Well, on the campaign trail today, David Cameron was challenged by the father of a disabled boy to defend his policy on special schools. Jonathan Bartley, whose son has spina bifida, confronted the Conservative leader in South London. Mr Cameron denied that he was seeking to segregate disabled children in the education system. Our political correspondent, Rita Chakrabarti, reports.
Would you meet some children
It's rare that an election campaign throws up an unexpected encounter. Jonathan Bartley spent 2 years getting his disabled son into a mainstream school. Anxious that David Cameron would make it even harder, he confronted him.
But why doesn't your manifesto say you want to encourage children into mainstream schools? Your manifesto does not say.
I wrote it, sir. I can't do any more than promise. I want you to get what's right for your son. And I can tell you the battle I had with my son to get the education he needed. And you know, I know how much it rips families apart, sir, but I absolutely promise you we are trying to get what you want for your children. It should be your choice.
That it's a charged issue for Mr Cameron is evident. He fought to get his disabled son into the school he wanted. At issue are Tory plans in their manifesto, which say they will end the bias towards including children with special needs in mainstream schools. Later, Mr Cameron tried to clarify the party's position.
What we want to do is give parents an absolute right of choice, that if you feel mainstream is right for you, you must be able to go to a mainstream school. But if, like I did, you want your child to go to a special school, that should be available.
Despite this, Mr Bartley said later he was still not convinced by the Tories' policy. Defeat at ping pong at a more conventional campaign event. Not many moments touch a raw nerve politically or emotionally. Today, Mr Cameron encountered both. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Westminster.
We're live to Westminster tonight, and our political editor, Nick Robinson, is there. Nick, can we focus on the main development, that warning from the IFS? Should we be in any way surprised by the reticence of these big parties to spell out the gloom to come?
Well, perhaps not, Hugh, because after all, in no election campaign guide does it say the way to win votes in a campaign is to promise to put people's taxes up and cut spending on the things that they really like. And if you talk to politicians behind the scenes, they will say, don't you realise just how difficult it is? The Tories point out that when they did warn of an age of austerity, their poll rating started to slide. The government says, give us credit for goodness sake, we have at least said that some taxes are going up. The Liberal Democrats claim the same. They all have a problem though now, it seems to me, Hugh, which is after the expenses crisis, which did so much to damage trust in Parliament after the banking crisis, there's a real danger that if this debate is not had on this side of an election, when afterwards drastic cuts do have to be made, whoever is in power, that then there will be another crisis of confidence in politics because people don't feel they were really told the truth. Of course, there is a debate about when you start cutting, how far you go, how much you rely on taxes. We'll see that in the big BBC Prime Ministerial debate on Thursday night.
Nick, indeed, thank you very much. Nick Robinson there at Westminster.